Welcome to Dark Horizon Creations and part 2 of our video series, Let's Paint a Warthog. Last week what we did was we painted the wheels and the tires of the Warthog, and today what we're going to be doing is painting the suspension of the vehicle. And one of the things I want to point out is the level of detail that Wicked Cool Toys has incorporated into this toy. Now here in the US, these retail for around $25 at Walmart. I think I've purchased 4 or 5 of these so far. I can't remember how many. I think it's 4. But anyway, I wanted to point out the detail of the suspension and the underside of the vehicle, because this is an area on a toy vehicle where companies generally try to incorporate cost-saving features by using a minimal amount of detail as possible. Wicked Cool Toys has done just the opposite, and you don't really see that cost passed on to the consumer. You know, it is just phenomenal, and this looks light years better than anything that we've seen previously by any other company, including McFarlane. If you'll notice the shocks here with the molded springs on them, you got your swing arms, your rotor. If you look on the back side of the rotor right here, you can see the brake caliper. This black area that I've dry brushed is actually the engine of the vehicle. Over here you can see the fuel tank right here, parts of the transmission. Just incredible. You know, the skid plates on the bottom. I mean, just look at this. Let me get this into focus here so you guys can see this. There. I mean, it's just incredible. You know, the attention to detail that they've included on this vehicle. One thing I really want to point out is the tow hooks on the front that double as a push bumper, and this is where, you know, you get the tusks for the Warthog, and it gets its name. They molded this directly onto the frame of the vehicle, which they molded into the toy. I've never seen this done on a toy vehicle before. If this were a real-world military vehicle, this is exactly how it would be made. Because, you know, if you push another vehicle or have to ram a vehicle out of the way, you want that kinetic energy to be absorbed down the frame of the vehicle and to dissipate without causing damage to the chassis. And that's just incredible that they put that in there. So there's all kind of detail on this toy all the way around. And, you know, I'm very thankful that they produced this. Again, they've just done a phenomenal job with this Warthog. So today we're going to be painting the suspension, and you can see I've dry brushed some areas already in black. I did not dry brush anything on the previous one that I painted. I just went straight to the parts with gunmetal and with the oxide for mud and things like that. But I dry brushed this to show 2 different techniques today. So what we're going to be using are our Royal Art brushes. These are synthetic head brushes. You can see they're all flat head, various sizes. We're going to be using Apple Barrel Gloss Black, which is already on there, Folk Art Metallics, Gunmetal Gray, and Folk Art and Apple Barrel are owned by the same company, Plaid Crafts. I've got the brown oxide, and we'll possibly use some nutmeg brown. And I brought out the dark granite just in case we need it. I use 70% isopropyl alcohol for cleanup. I prefer it over water because it's much faster. And sometimes there are areas that are hard to reach or hard to clean up, and it'll get it off a lot easier than scrubbing with water will. So the first thing I want to look at is this gunmetal gray. And I always like to take a few minutes and shake up the bottle, get as much of the pigment as I can off the bottom where it's settled, and get it mixed up really well. And then I will open the bottle, and you can see you've got pigment in the cap. Now I have a color palette in my drawer for paints and stuff. I just don't use it that often. Let's see, I want to start with this one. I think this is a number 6. Yeah, number 6 flathead. And this is one that I use very, very frequently. You can see it's kind of stiff even after being cleaned. So what I do is I like to get the paint really on the brush. And then I will just come over here and wipe as much of that off as possible. And you can see areas like the springs right here. And I'll just paint that on. And again, this is dry brushing. And let's get that into focus. There we go. And you can see that already, how it's beginning to pop. And I really like the rotors and the brake calipers. I think they've done a phenomenal job on that. And those of you guys who are in the military, or perhaps you've worked for Meritor, you guys know what I'm talking about. They produce the brake components for a lot of your military vehicles, the MRAP and things like that. Really great company. I used to work for Fastenal, and when I would have to make deliveries to Meritor, I'd always take a few minutes to stop and look at what was going on, because I was just fascinated by what I saw. Just a really, really great place to work, and I was always fascinated by everything that was going on in there. Now, one of the things I want to point out while I'm dry brushing is this. You can see the metallic look to the springs and things like that. And of course, I'm going to allow this to dry, but I don't want it to be real shiny. You know, I don't want it to look like chrome silver or anything like that, which is why I'm using gunmetal. And there are parts, you know, like right here, where I will dry brush to simulate paint being scraped off and you seeing the bare metal. And that's something you'll see on military vehicles. A lot of components like this on the chassis are painted to match the frame of the vehicle in a base color like olive drab or coyote brown or whatever, but after wear and tear and things, you're going to see it scraped off. And you can see this here. This is factory paint that they've done here, and that's exactly how it's going to look after it's been used a lot. And that's all that I'm doing here. I'm just dry brushing the springs and the shocks, and down here the swing arms and things like that. And then you've got these components down here like the engine. I've already, and you can see how the metallic will pop when you've got a base coat on there of black. And anytime you're painting something metallic, you guys see that? Anytime you're painting something metallic like this, you want a base / primer of gloss or semi-gloss black, because that's going to make the metallic colors really stand out. You know, and you can make it as metallic or not that you want. It's just your personal liking. There is no right or wrong in doing this. It's all about personal preference and what you're going for. And just that little bit of dry brushing, you can see the difference already. And that's all that I do. That's all there is to this. You know, again, there's no right or wrong. You know, and if you mess up, if you have an accident, what I like to do is take a Q-tip and I will just dip it in a little bit of alcohol and then wipe off the excess in the area that I messed up and go back and do it again. And, you know, that's the good thing about using these Apple Barrel brand acrylics. They clean up really, really easy with water, but again, I use alcohol, particularly on hard plastics like this. And, you know, this isn't a cheap plastic that they've made this toy out of. This is a really solid toy. And to be honest with you, this is the first toy of this quality that I've seen in a long, long time. Back in the 80s, a lot of the plastic vehicles were made similar to this. They were very resilient. They weren't cheap plastic like you see some of the things made out of today. A great example of that is to look at the plastics used in transformers 10, 12, 20 years ago and look at the plastics used in them today, and you'll see that there is a tremendous difference in quality. And just that little bit of paint, you can see a difference there already. But we are far from being done with this. And I like to allow this stuff to dry for, generally speaking, around an hour before I come back and recoat it or paint over it. See if we can get the camera into focus. There we go. So you guys can see that's all that I'm doing. And this bare plastic here that's olive drab, I'm just going over it like so. Because on a vehicle like this, you're going to have metallic areas on the chassis and the frame that's exposed that aren't going to have as much damage or wear and tear on them. And you can come down here on a skid plates and just dry brush some of this on to show weathering and things like that, and wear and tear. And that's what it looks like. Yeah. I really enjoy doing this. This gives me something to do. But I'm very passionate about science fiction and fantasy. I'm passionate about collecting toys. I like customizing them because it gives them, you know, life, really gives them character. It brings out a lot of details in some of the mold that don't have any color to them. And again, I'm not trying to like paint the entire thing. I just want to bring out the details of the suspension of the vehicle. Because you have to remember, this is a military vehicle and it's been painted, you know, in that olive drab color to look this way. And it's got a lot of wear and tear. It's seen a lot of action. And we want it to reflect that without the paint being gunky or, you know, looking globbed on or what have you. So that's all I'm doing on both sides of the vehicle. As well as the underside here with the engine and your suspension components. See that? So we're going to give that a little while to dry. We're going to come back and I'm going to show you guys how to weather on the effects for mud and things like that.